Hi guys, today we're going to do a game menu similar to the new Mortal Kombat game's main menu. And without further ado, here is the application that we're going to have. I didn't use any of the images because there is really no point. We're doing custom menus, so if you want to, you could use your own images. And as always, we're not going for the exact copying. So just a concept that we're interested in. So as you can see, we have the menu items, so 1 player, 2 player, and so on which you can click, and get immediate response. So if you click on online, you'll see in the terminal it says online activated, and so on. So to the left, this is kind of update kind of thing. So if you want your image, new messages to be displayed there, or something like a new update is available. In the middle is just an animation of the name of the application, or anything you want really. And to the right is some promotional stuff you can do with the application, like download this or download that, or try out our new feature or something like that. And yeah, if you do like the video, please subscribe, that would be great. To the left, at the bottom, you can see the name of the game, or the name of the menu, sorry. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get into the code. I'll leave the application open. So these are the the imports for this tutorial. The source code file will be up before the video, so you'll be able to download source code from there. The only thing you'll need is well, just a project really. We don't need any resources, any of the libraries. We're using JavaFX, pure JavaFX, so nothing else is needed. Just create a package called calm your name and .tutorial26 or whatever, and we'll start from there. So this is the list of imports. This is the name of our application, extends application, and in the entry point we launch our JavaFX application. As for our fields, we have very few of them actually. So our font, so we create a system font. When you use an empty string, it will try to find the default font, which is system font. Font weight bold, this is the font we'll be using for pretty much everything except for messages, and you can use it for messages as well. It's really up to you. And the font size 18. The vertical box is the menu box containing all these elements, 1 player, 2 player, and so on. Current item is the one that is highlighted, so basically an integer to keep track of the current menu item. And this integer is the number of messages. Finally, we have one more field, which is the background thread. It is a bit more than that. It will be called every few seconds. I think it's 5 seconds. We'll come back to that later. So yeah, let's start with the start method that we've overridden. So what we have here is our scene. We create a scene, we get create content as root. So this is the method that we call set and key pressed, up, down, and enter. These are the key presses that we bind, or key codes. So up is the arrow up on the keyboard, down, down. These are for basically scrolling through the elements in your items. And when we press enter, the action happens. So yeah, we get the event, we get the code of the event. If it is code up, then we check if the current item is greater than 0, because if it is 0, then we cannot go up anymore, so we don't do anything. If it is greater than 0, then we get current menu item, we set it active to false, so we deactivate it, and we subtract 1 from current item, and then use the value on the get menu item, so that we're sort of go up. So if you're online, this is element 2 in this list of elements. So we go up by 1 element, and then we set it to active, or set active true. Exactly the same thing with down, but instead of checking if it's greater than 0, we check if it's less than the number of elements minus 1. Because if we simply check if it's less than just size, then we press down, the index will equal to the number of elements, and we'll get an exception, because we always have -1 index as the last element -1, or number of elements -1, because the indices start from 0. Again, the same thing, we deactivate the current item, we then increase the current item by 1, and then activate that item. As for keycode enter, we just call activate, so whatever, well, we'll come back to it anyway, so I'll cover it in a second. We then set C into the primary stage. That's very straightforward. And one more thing, set and close request. So whenever this X is clicked, so basically when we're closing the window, we would like to shut down the background thread, or rather background service, so that it's no longer lingering in the background. Otherwise, although the graphical user interface will exit, your application will still be running without this. Finally, we show the stage, which is this window. Right, now as for, yeah, let's go to create content. So it's just that, yeah. We create new pane, which will contain all of our UI elements. Set preferred size 900 by 600, which is basically the scene. We create a rectangle for the background, so by default the color will be black, as you can see on the background. We then create content frame, which is one of our classes that we create. So the content frame is basically that rectangular area with smooth corners. So we have left content, middle, and right, which we place in a horizontal box because they're placed and they're laid out horizontally. We then translate our horizontal box by 120 units in X direction, and then by 50 units in Y direction. Obviously, you can tune those values the way you need them to. So menu item, item exit, this is the only item that actually does something. So we call set on activate, and then we call system.exit 0, so basically exit the application when we hit enter on exit. This is the menu box, vertical box, which contains all of these elements, menu items. 10 is the spacing between the elements, and then we create new menu item with the particular string used as a name. as the text to display. And finally, item X, because we've defined it, we declared it earlier. We set alignment top center so that everything is centered from top. Set translate X, Y, again you can tune these coordinates, those values. Text about is just the name of the application and the author. You can replace that by some kind of logo for your game or whatever. And then just place them wherever you want as well. Set fill white, set font, the font we're using. Set opacity, this is the see-through effect, or how transparent it is. 0.2 means 20%, 20% visible, so 0% would be not visible at all. And then we get the 0th element, or the first element, and then we set it to set it active, because then it will be highlighted. Finally, now that we've created all of our UI elements, we get children of the root, which we created earlier, and then add everything in there. Background first, then the horizontal box, which is that, menu box, and the about text, which is here. Right, now onto the content frame stuff. Yeah, so content frame is our own class, which extends stack pane, and is actually very small. So in the constructor we only take one element, which is going to be our content, and this is the content of the frame. We set alignment to center because it's a stack pane. Everything is going to be sort of stacked. All elements that you add will be stacked on top of each other, and position at center means they'll be stacked at the center. Rectangle is the thing around the content, and 200 by 200 is the width and height, so we essentially get a square. Arc width, arc height allow us to make the corners smoother. Set stroke is the color of the border of that rectangle. Finally, we get children for that stack pane. Add all, frame first and then content, and that is it for content frame. Now, since we create content in a different method, I tried to make the content itself, the type of content, as general as possible, so you could replace it with an image view or whatever content you can create in JavaFX. So create left content. This is the messages thing, which is essentially a text. We set color to white, so the text color, and then we use our background thread, or rather background scheduled service. We schedule a fixed rate to run this code after a 2 second delay and every 5 seconds, and this is the time unit, which is seconds in our case. You could replace it to minutes or milliseconds depending on what you're actually trying to achieve. It is important to run this code in a platform.run later, because this is a background thread and is not the JavaFX UI thread, but all this stuff can only be executed on JavaFX application thread, so UI thread. So this has to be called before, which means that all of that will be executed on JavaFX thread, because all UI changes must be synchronized with the thread and have to be done on the JavaFX UI thread. So yeah, Translate transition duration half a second inbox. So translate transition basically means move an object over a certain period of time, and this time period is going to be half a second. We set y to 150. This is the end y coordinate, so it starts here as 0 and then goes to 150. So as you can see, it goes down. We're also declaring a fade transition, because as it goes down, you can see that it also sort of disappears, fades into the background, and this effect is achieved by doing this. Set to value 0 means the end value of the animation or transition will be 0, so for the fade, and this basically changes the opacity, the thing that we talked about a while ago. We then create a parallel transition because we want both of those transitions to start working at the same time, and we give those two objects, we send them into a constructor to parallel transition. We then set a callback, set unfinished. This is the code that will be called when the parallel transition ends. So we set inbox, set translate y of the inbox to minus 150, which is the exactly the same amount, but not down, but up. And then we set text. You have ++ messages, so we increase the number of messages by 1, and then set that as a text to our inbox. Translate transition, we create a new translate transition with exactly the same parameters, pretty much. Instead of going to 150, it now goes down to 0, because we've just moved it to minus 150. So it now comes, when this thing disappears, the other one comes down from above. So this is the thing that achieves that effect. And we also create our sort of backwards fade in transition, which is pretty much exactly the same, except for the set to value, which is not 0 but 1. And we create another parallel transition which encompasses all of those two things, and we play that when this first transition ends. So it works beautifully. Now for the middle content, it is just that. So we first define our title, which is MKX menu app. We create our horizontal box of letters, so each of these things will be a single animated letter. We set alignment to letters position center, so that all of these letters within the horizontal box will be positioned from the center. From 0 to the length of the title, so length of this string, we create a text which is just a single letter. We take a character in at that position, and then we stringify it, so we convert it to a string by just concatenating with nothing. You can also do a string.value of and then pass a character into there. We set font, use our constant font, set fill white, and letters get children add letter to the list of letters. We then create a translate transition again, so that this animation can happen. Now the duration is 2 seconds, and we are animating a single letter. We also set delay of duration milliseconds I multiplied by 50, so as this thing increases, each of the letters will have an increased time for delay, and this will create this kind of wavy thing. Set to y minus 25, so right here at the center it will be 0, which means minus 25 is slightly above. Set auto reverse true so that it will automatically do the reverse translation or transition. Set cycle count indefinite, so it will run forever. And we play it. Finally, we return letters object, because this is the object that we're going to place inside the content. As for write content, it is pretty much the same as the mill content, except for the opacity and the transition type. So we start off with opacity 0, so it is invisible when we start the application. We create a fade transition with duration 2 seconds. We animate each letter, and then again same delay, but we set to value 1. So each of the letters one by one will become visible, and then because we auto-reverse it, they will become invisible again one by one. So it creates this really nice effect. Alright, so we've covered our content frames. Now we talked about placing them into a horizontal box. Menu item, okay. Menu item class, there we go. So it extends horizontal box because it contains this thing which I call tri-circle, because it looks like on the original image like three circles together with a hole in the middle that I made sort of low budget version of it. Anyway, tri-circle. So yeah, menu item. In the constructor we take a string, which is the name of the menu. We call super constructor, so basically we call constructor of horizontal box with a value of 15, which is the spacing between elements in the box. Set alignment, position center, text is the text that we create, so this is the text with the string. We set font, our global font. Set effect Gaussian blur with value of 2, because I thought there is some kind of blur applied onto it, because it's not very clear. Maybe because it's because of the resolution of the image. Anyway, if you don't want to, you can leave it out, and it'll be as clear as this here, MKX menu app. This is a text where nothing was applied as the effect. Get children add all, C1, which is left tri-circle, then text, and then another one of those symbols. Set active to false, so by default it will not be highlighted, and by default set unactivate, so basically when we hit enter on this item, by default it will simply print to the terminal saying this particular menu item was activated. Set active takes a Boolean and is really just that, setting those symbols invisible or visible depending on what kind of Boolean you pass in. And then if it is true, then set fill color white, so the highlighted element will be white, and not active element will not be highlighted, and hence the color gray. Set unactivate takes a runnable, so some code that can be run, basically, which I called script, and unactivate. If the script is not null, then you run the script. And because we do set unactivate in the constructor, it will not be null anyway. And the tricircle thing is extends parent. So we create those three shapes, which are really just a circle with a hole, and then you can create a hole within a circle by just subtracting a smaller circle from the bigger circle, and I use those values. You can play around with them if you want to get some different effect or something. Once we create our shape by subtracting this from that, we set color white, the same for other two shapes. So there are basically three shapes. The first thing we do not move, so it's the bottom left one. The one on the right is this one that we translate by 5 units in the X direction. Shape 3 is on at the top, which we translate by 2.5 units in the X direction. So it moves sort of to the center. And then we translate -5 units in the Y direction. So basically you move it up and you get this tricircle effect. Get children, add all, shape 1, shape 2, shape 3. Set effect, again, this blur. If you want to, you can do it. If not, just leave it out. Alright, so we've covered this and that. So a get menu item is just, you get this menu box, which is our vertical box that we've defined at the top. And you get children and then get index, and you typecast it to menu item, because we know that we create menu items in there and not some other kind of type. So I think that is it for this tutorial. Yeah, we've covered everything. If you have questions, just leave them as comments or send me a message on YouTube. If you liked the video, please subscribe. That will help. Hopefully you liked the video, and you'll be able to create a custom menu for your games. Also, if you have time, please complete a 3-question survey. So these 3 questions are basically asking you what kind of content you'd like to see on this channel, and this will help me improve the content on that channel. And if you would like to see more game menus, or at least some low-budget imitations of them, then yeah, just leave a comment, a suggestion, and that'll be great. Thanks. And also thank you for watching the video.